Hey, Jody here. This is the video prior to Father's Day. So the goal here, the number one goal of this video is to try to make sure that you don't get a tie unless that's what you want. Today I want to show you a few good gift ideas, and so you can show this, you can pass this on to your wife, your girlfriend, your kids. Make sure you get something really good for Father's Day. All these things I already have, but if I didn't have them, I would really be glad to get them for Father's Day. So today I'm going to show some of the products that I sell on the store, also a few that I don't sell but I think are pretty awesome. You'll just have to get them somewhere else like Amazon.com. There's a couple of books, a couple of welding helmets. Before we dive in, let me just take a moment to honor my father. And you know, the past week or so, a lot been going on in the news. The passing of Muhammad Ali being one of them. And my dad and Muhammad Ali had something in common, and that was Parkinson's disease. As long as I remember my dad shaking, had the tremors, you know, ever since I was a little kid on up until he passed away. I have distinct memories every day, him coming home from work, reading the paper. Eventually that newspaper would rattle so bad he'd have to just put it down, calm himself, and pick it back up. And well, what does that have to do with anything? Well, here's the deal. We all got obstacles. We all got circumstances. And my dad got up the next morning after shaking like that, and he went to work every day, 7 days a week most times. And you know, he was supporting a kid who didn't really grasp the importance of it or even appreciate it. I do now. I get it now, Dad. I'm sure there have been times when I've probably worked too much, but my dad gave me this book. I was in my 20s already when he gave it to me, and it was called The Richest Man in Babylon. And one thing I remember, and the one thing I took hold of out of that book, was don't run from work, make work your friend. And so Mom and Dad were never scared of work. They definitely lived that out for me. And so that's been the thing for me. It's probably been the main thing. Every good thing I have, every good thing I've been able to give somebody else as a result of work. So, you know, my dad passed that on to me. I'm passing it on as best I can. All right, so we're going to get into some demonstrations of these products and hopefully some good tips along the way. Let's do it. All right, first up is TIG Finger and a TIG Finger XL. You'll notice I'm wearing Lincoln TIG gloves. That's also a good gift idea. Just go to Amazon, search Lincoln TIG gloves, you'll find these. The thing about the TIG Finger is it's kind of like having a prop in your pocket. You always need a prop somewhere to have a steady hand, and sometimes it's difficult to find a place to prop. Sometimes you need to prop right on the metal next to where you're welding, and sometimes that gets really hot. So that's what the TIG Finger does. It's a super heat resistant material. It just lets you slip on a finger and prop right next to what you're doing. On an aluminum pie cut assembly like this is an intake for some little tuner car. That aluminum heats up pretty quick. You know, you could easily get a bunch of 2x4s or a bunch of 4x4s and prop, but with the TIG Finger you can just prop next to the weld and not have to fool with all that stuff. For 6G pipe joints like this, pipe tests, this is a 2-inch Schedule 80 pipe test. It really comes in handy. If you can't figure out how to walk the cup on something small like this, having a TIG Finger on your pinky, being able to prop, can take a lot of the anxiety out of taking a test like this, because you won't be worried about baking your fingers. The XL is just a little bit bigger, a little bit thicker. It fits on 2 fingers on most people. It'll fit on 2 of my fingers. I've got probably a slightly larger than average hand. Fits on 2 of my fingers. There's some big welders out there though. Another good idea for a gift is a DVD set. You know, every year I take all the YouTube videos from the previous year, put them on a 4-disc set, and offer them up for sale on the store. So these will be discounted somewhat for the Father's Day time period. And it's a lot of welding videos on a DVD. Here's just an example of some of the stuff you'll see there. There are 3 things that most beginner TIG welders do wrong when they're learning to TIG weld, and that is hold too long an arc. That's probably the main one. Too much torch angle, that's another one. And then the third one is not shielding the hot tip of that rod. Now, when the tip of that rod balls up like that and you take it out of the argon, it introduces all kind of oxide in the puddle. Here I'm just correcting all those 3 things, and you'll see how much better things go. Same amperage, just corrected those 3 things. Now here's an example of where all that's applied. Here is trying to keep a really small bead on some 11 gauge cold roll, where you don't want to come all the way up to the corner of the metal. You want to keep the bead confined. You have to keep a tight arc, and you have to keep your angle under control. Same thing applies for TIG welding aluminum. Here's how not to do it. Getting started off on the wrong foot by holding too long an arc, introducing rod before the puddle is ready for it, and not shielding the tip of the rod, just doing all kinds of things wrong. It's hard to neck down a fillet weld once you get it started too big. Here, contrast that with using a nice tight arc with a tapered electrode, and it pinpoints the heat and drives that metal into the root of the joint. Also on this DVD are some MIG welding techniques for uphill. Using a technique that keeps the arc on the front or leading edge of the puddle is very important for short circuit MIG welding. So here I'm just using a series of triangles to do that. Another thing on the DVD set is methods on how to cut, polish, and etch to verify penetration. Did a little bit of 70-18 stick welding on that DVD as well, and here's some uphill practice, just padding beads uphill. Probably some of the best practice you can get for vertical uphill stick welding. And then once you get that dialed in, then that same skill set applies to taking a 3G groove weld with a backing strap test. Here's a slight weave technique over the root pass, something that's not always permitted on those tests, but if it is, I prefer to do it, so I did show it. Mostly stringers are required on 3G groove weld tests. A little bit of information on the 4G also, the overhead test. And then there's information on walking a cup, comparing it to just walking a solo cup across a kitchen countertop, or it's kind of like walking a 55-gallon drum across a shop floor, actually. So it's demonstrated here on the socket weld. And in addition to demonstrating the walk in the cup technique on the DVD, there's also some demonstrations on freehand, and and here I'm using the TIG Finger because that is getting really smoking hot. But it lets me prop really nicely, and there's not always a chance to walk the cup. Sometimes there's stuff in the way, and you need to just be able to freehand. Again, it's just some generic type stick welding tasks like this, and then a project that I did on a welding cart, which involved welding some brackets to hold the gas cylinder. Plenty of arc shots, plenty of information, plenty of settings for the machines, plenty of techniques, and that is, again, the latest and greatest is the 2015 set. Another great gift idea is a Stubby Gas Lens kit, and here's the reason: because most 200 amp and under TIG welding machines come with a torch like this, an air-cooled 17 or a 26. And it's nothing wrong with that, but it's far from being ideal. So I really like the Stubby Gas Lens kit because not only does it shrink the overall size of the torch, it just makes it feel better in your hand, and it lets you get up inside things, or it lets you get in tight areas. Just much more maneuverable than the full-size 17 or 26 with the long cap and the long cup on it. Now, if you already have a water-cooled 20 style torch, it's going to look something like this, and it probably came with a standard collet body and standard cup. Nothing wrong with that either. It's just not ideal for getting the best gas shielding and being able to extend your electrode out far when you need to. Sometimes that's very important. There are times when you really need a long electrode extension, and you just can't do it with a regular size or regular style gas lens cup. That's when this Furic number 12 Pyrex cup really comes in handy. You can get a 1-inch extension on here, and even sometimes more than that, and still maintain good gas coverage. In this particular instance, you can see how that's necessary with that air fitting, the barbed fitting coming around there, being in the way on this turntable job. And then even on a stationary job, not on a turntable, that thing is sticking out so far it would prevent even the smallest of cups from getting the optimal angle on there. So the thing is just, being able to extend the electrode out a good inch and still maintain excellent shielding for a good quality job is just, there's no substitute for it. Here's just an example of the kind of shielding you can get on some stainless steel. Now if you're using a 17 air-cooled or a 26, it requires an adapter kit, and I also offer those at the store. Here's a cool little tool, excellent little gift idea, the mag tab from Strong Hand Tools. It's primarily designed to hold a tab onto something like a roll cage or a chassis or something like that, but it does much more than that. Like right now you can see I'm using it to weld an end cap on this welding cart that I'm building, just to cover up an end of a piece of square tubing. It's not really designed for that. It's designed for holding odd objects like this on something, just some things that are hard to hold with one hand while you tack with the other. As long as it's steel and magnetic, it will hold it. All right, Welding Books, a book that I've been recommending for some time now, is Metals and How to Weld Them from the James F. Lincoln Foundation. You can find it at jflf.org. It's a very inexpensive book, a very good book. Another one is this Audell Welding Pocket Reference book. This is under $20 at Amazon.com. And it's just got all kinds of little charts, welding symbols. Even just for the welding symbols, it's really worth having it. But it's got charts for tip sizes, for oxy-fuel cutting, all kinds of things like that. It's just a really good little book. Now, welding helmets, welding hoods. A couple of them that I've tried out lately that I've found really good are this new Lincoln Viking 3350 with 4C technology. Got a little modification on the headgear there. And just a really good optics on there, super clear arc. Another one is the Optrel E684, and the thing about this one is it's got the adjustments on the outside, and it's actually got an automatic mode where it adjusts in intensity. If you're going down a really low amperage, it lightens the shade and it darkens the shade for you when you're high amperage if you're in auto mode, and that's pretty cool. If you want a cheaper helmet that's just a passive, this is a really good old school helmet. Used to be Huntsman, now it is Jackson 411P, super light, super good headgear. I've had this thing over 20 years and have loved it. Another good old school helmet that is still available is the fiber metal pipeliner helmet. And it's just about as light as the one next to it. You can see a little difference in the headgear there. Pipeliner helmets typically have a piece of rubber here, sometimes a piece of surgical tubing. And honestly, you can turn any helmet into any headgear into that. Just drill a hole and use surgical tubing. But that's a nice old school helmet. Feels good, very lightweight, and pretty much bulletproof. These are very comparable in their weight, and both of them are fairly reasonable. I think at around $50 or $60. You can find them both on Amazon. All right. Well, hey, thanks for watching, and happy Father's Day. Spend some time with your families and enjoy your families. And we'll see you next time.